Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering Krusty Towers and Mrs. Puff You're Fired, which are probably two of the more, or perhaps most, well-known Season 4 episodes. Maybe that's because they feel a lot like they could be from Season 3. My previous musings that I think Mrs. Puff You're Fired is from Season 5, notwithstanding. If anything, that's just more evidence that there isn't as huge a difference between Seasons 3, 4, and 5 as people think there is, but that's a conversation for when I review Season 5. Anyway, like always, gotta say thank you to everyone who's watching today, and now let's just get right into it. In my experience, Krusty Towers has been widely regarded as one of the best, if not the best, episodes of Season 4. And you know, that's a pretty fair assessment in my eyes, because this is a really good episode. Can't really beat around the bush on that one. I just had to come right out and say it. It's really good. As the episode begins, I can't help but notice how there's a new trend of SpongeBob and Squidward walking to and or from work together. It happened a few times in the previous 3 seasons, I think, but it feels like it's happened a lot more in these relatively newer episodes. That's just interesting to me. Has nothing to do with anything. And either way, I like the beginning of this episode a lot, because I like how it begins with SpongeBob and Squidward in the middle of a conversation, in medias res, if you will. I like when SpongeBob and Squidward get along and when Squidward is generally civil towards SpongeBob. It's nice when they're mutually friends or mutually friendly. I like harmony. Anyway, this episode gets straight to the point with having the eponymous Krusty Towers appear less than a minute in. You know, Mr. Krabs was onto something with his new business model here because hotels absolutely overcharge people, even more than a nice restaurant. But honestly, I think it's hilarious that a fast food owner turned his restaurant into a hotel, because imagine if that happened in real life. It's just amusing to me. This episode even lampshades the absurdity of this move by having the first person who walks into the Krusty Towers be someone who just wanted a quick lunch. I also find the design of the towers to be funny because it's just the Krusty Krab on top of a skyscraper, and how it's literally just the base of the Krusty Krab put on top of itself a bunch of times. From this initial setup, the episode is really just a great collection of gags. It's one of those episodes that isn't very plot-driven, and I've got no problems with that. I've said before that sometimes simple is better for SpongeBob SquarePants, and this is a pretty good example of that. Patrick is hilarious in this episode, checking into the hotel so he can get away from it all, despite doing nothing and then doodling on the sign-in form. One thing about Patrick is that he's the show's wildcard character, and I'm trying to figure out how to word what I mean. He strikes me as the kind of guy who has all sorts of adventures that we never see, you know what I mean? I guess the Patrick Star Show kind of confirms this in a way, but anyway, back to my point. Patrick's like the one character in this show where being consistent doesn't matter as much. Think of how many times Patrick speaks astutely or shows that he can be pretty smart, even though we all know his archetype is the dumb guy. Patrick as a character can be very unpredictable sometimes, and as I write and speak this script, I recognize that I'm just shooting the shit, but I hope that I managed to get across what I meant here. Okay, let me get back to what I was actually discussing. Krusty Towers. Where was I? Oh, right. So, right after Patrick checks into the hotel, we've got the moment that reminds me of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 3, where Patrick suddenly has luggage that weighs a ton, only for it to turn out to be rocks. Squidward's reactions during this whole scene are hilarious, and this entire scene really highlights the greatness that can come from Squidward-Patrick interactions. I seriously cannot stop laughing at this part, let me tell you. And then Mr. Krabs mocking Squidward is hilarious, even though it's true that I'm like Squidward and I cry about having to work for a living. This Patrick section also gives us a glorious and brilliant brick joke in the form of one Krabby Patty and one room with cheese, line and payoff, so I love that a lot. I also love the whole part where Squidward finally gets back downstairs, only to be called back upstairs because Patrick got over not wanting to bother him. That was hilarious. Sometimes seeing Squidward lose over and over is peak comedy. I also have many questions about how SpongeBob ended up being clogged in the toilet, but you know what? I don't think I really want to know. I just really like the cohesiveness of this episode, or how many callbacks and repeated things there are here. Because the plot is simple, it's able to keep all of its plot elements in one basket, meaning that we get brilliant brick jokes like the one I mentioned earlier, running gags, and repeated mantras like the plaque. The humor of Krusty Towers simply works. I'm struggling to word why the humor works, but I think it's just so smooth and good, and it feels effortless, and I love all the running gags and callbacks. Anyway, seeing Squidward quit after all this mistreatment is satisfying, especially when he comes sauntering right back in as a guest, which signals to us that this episode ain't done yet, because there's still more humor to be experienced. Squidward being downright polite to SpongeBob, comparatively, is great because it connects to what I said earlier about them being pretty civil in this episode, and even better, him turning his hostility to Mr. Krabs is far more entertaining. When these two characters are at it, the episode is often in a good spot. Squidward making Mr. Krabs carry him and then eat a disgusting Krabby Patty is hilarious and full of universal justice. I love how SpongeBob is so innocent in telling Mr. Krabs that the patty doesn't have all those foul ingredients of cheese, it just has all of those foul ingredients without the cheese. And then cut to the amazing payoff for the brick joke. Things get even better with the scene with Squidward's mom. This is a pretty well-known scene, and for good reason. First off, I love how random it is. Like, who is expecting Squidward's mom to make an appearance in this of all episodes? And then the way we're led to believe that Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob literally kidnap her is so funny, and I'm choosing to view this bit as a Nasty Patty callback, even though it probably isn't. And then after that, I love the montage of Squidward demanding his room be remodeled, mostly because I love looking at all the different rooms. I think they're neat. And then lastly, we have the ending of Krusty Towers that serves to reestablish the status quo, as a pool destroys the entire Krusty Towers building. The ending bit with the hospital is great as well, and yet another excellent representation of the United States healthcare system. Sorry, y'all know I will never be able to resist. But I love the ending bit about Mr. Krabs sending everybody to medical school, that was hilarious. And as a production note, I love the track at the end of this scene, Lazy Afternoon. It's just a really good track that was only used in this episode. A pity. Bringing it all together, Krusty Towers is simply a hilarious and excellent episode. There's really nothing else to it. And it's also a brilliantly written episode, with clever jokes coming at a really fast pace. It's easy to see why this episode is so loved among Season 4 episodes. Definitely a worthy addition to my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9.5 out of 10. Coming up next is another popular episode from Season 4, Mrs. Puff, You're Fired. I like how to the point this episode title is. Like, it tells you exactly what this episode is all about. It's a summary almost. Yeah, every episode title does this to some degree, but usually the titles are nouns so it feels more vague, while this is an entire sentence. Anyway, from what I've seen, people generally feel pretty positively about this episode, although I have seen some negative opinions here and there. This time, I'll try not to kill the suspense right away, and so I'll not say exactly what I think about this episode quite yet, though it'll probably become obvious soon. On the low, this episode is kinda about the ineffectiveness of bureaucracy. Okay, I'm somewhat joking, but I mean this entire beginning scene with Mrs. Puff being on thin ice and then fired, all because of one student, is ridiculous, considering that other than SpongeBob, she has a stellar track record. Mr. Fitz's declaration that the students cannot be blamed for the incompetence of the teacher is admirable, but it doesn't fit this case one bit. And while this scene is ridiculous, it's not frustrating, or at least not completely. Really, this scene serves to up the ante on how bad SpongeBob is at driving, although no free rides already made this quite clear. The scene does get a little more annoying when SpongeBob inevitably fails, and although he was literally in the car when Mrs. Puff did nothing but be a normal teacher, Mr. Fitz fires her. Again, all very ridiculous, but necessary to get the plot moving, so I suppose I can forgive it. I suppose. It also helps that Mrs. Puff pulls a doing time and finds joy in being free of this job. I feel bad for SpongeBob, though, because he knows that it's his fault that Mrs. Puff got fired, when really Mr. Fitz needs to be the one on the receiving end of that blame. So this first part of the episode is admittedly meh, and just a way to get the plot rolling, but things pick up pretty quickly once the drill sergeant shows up, because man, I love this guy. He is literally so funny. Sergeant Sam Roderick walked so the warden and the inmates of Summer could run. Anyway, firstly, I gotta say I love Sargent's design, and then I also gotta say I love his voice. Robin Sachs knew the assignment. Every scene with this dude is golden, which basically means that the rest of the episode is golden, but especially these next few minutes. I love Sargent's introduction as he comes into the classroom, absolutely demolishing the door while looking intense and intimidating. His expressions are hilarious, and no matter how many times I watch this episode, the bonbon scene will always get me laughing hysterically. Just the way this kid is oblivious as hell, and then everyone gasping dramatically, and how Sargent lets the kid enjoy the bonbon before literally throwing him out of the classroom, it's so funny to me. We then move on to Sargent teaching SpongeBob how to drive like he's in an army boot camp. I love how Sargent brings a completely different style to teaching, making SpongeBob crawl before he even thinks about driving. It's hilarious how serious this guy is taking his job. We need more driving instructors like him, cause nobody in the real world knows how to drive. I'm mostly joking, but it is true that here in the United States, our system for getting a driver's license is a total joke. The true solution is just getting rid of cars and investing in public transportation, but, well... Anyway, this entire semi-montage is hilarious, full of great jokes one after the other. SpongeBob first crawling and losing control over a rock is great. I think my favorite part is when the instructor makes SpongeBob take a boat apart and then put it back together again. And then SpongeBob makes a whole rocket. This is my favorite bit, not just because of the joke itself, but like every part of the execution seems to be personally tailored to making me laugh because like the line deliveries, the visuals, the music, it's all hilarious and a stroke of comedic genius. Once SpongeBob's training is just about complete, it backfires both predictably and unexpectedly, and I like that. Cause yeah, of course SpongeBob is only going to be able to drive blindfolded. He only practiced while blindfolded. Something SpongeBob is autistic. Don't ask me to elaborate. Anyway, the utter chaos that is the driving test with SpongeBob, Sergeant, and Mr. Fitz, and later Mrs. Puff, is amazing, backed by some great usage of Spongemonger, if I do say so myself, which I do. I love all the varied situations they get into, like explosions, running in the cake, getting painted in jellyfish fields, and picking up Mrs. Puff. Also, does anyone else mix up parts of this scene with parts of the same kind of out-of-control driving scene from Boating Buddies? I mix those scenes up all the time. As this scene goes on, it only gets better. The part where Sergeant sacrifices himself to completely no effect is absolutely hilarious and gets me laughing every time. Reminds me of that one scene in I think it's Jurassic World movie? I don't know, it's been making the rounds on Twitter, that's all I know. And I like how we don't even see Sergeant again after he does that, like, man was just gone. And then the part where SpongeBob ends up driving into town and somehow getting Patrick's pants on him is hilarious, if only for the randomness of the event and Patrick's brief appearance to chase them, calling out for his pants, which the delivery on that line just cracks me up for whatever reason. I also just really liked all the dialogue in the dust cloud. I thought it was funny and left much up to to the imagination. And I like how, in the end, Patrick snatches his pants up too, all offended and such, but I really liked how the out-of-control driving is resolved by SpongeBob being blinded. Like, that's brilliant and some cohesive, sensible writing. The ending of Mrs. Puff You're Fired is like Krusty Towers in that it reestablishes the status quo. Some excellent voice acting by Mary Jo Catlett here as well, because you can just hear the tears in Mrs. Puff's voice as she tells SpongeBob that she'll be teaching him again, and that his record has been wiped clean. The ending really makes you feel bad for Mrs. Puff, but I wouldn't call it a downer ending, since, again, it is just reestablishing the status quo. And besides, where would we be without some good boating school episodes, or some Mrs. Puff and SpongeBob interactions? Oh, and the name tag shattering once again when SpongeBob leaves is a nice touch. I really like Mrs. Puff You're Fired. I used to have it in my good tier, but honestly I have no idea why, because this episode belongs higher than that for sure. It's hilarious and has some really great writing moments as well, and there's some great character design in this one too. This episode is overshadowed by its sister episode, I must say that, but I think it is still at least decently well known. And it's also true that I think its sister episode is a bit stronger than this one. But anyway, all of that is to say that this episode is going in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9.3 out of 10. As always, gotta end the review with some closing thoughts of mine. I don't really have any today other than a couple of unrelated musings. So, firstly, as you guys might have noticed, the score inflation I've been warning you all about may or may not be beginning. I mean, a 9.5 and a 9.3 are very good scores. Not saying these episodes don't deserve them, but I don't think I gave out scores this high quite enough in the previous 3 seasons. Y'all just better get used to this new status quo of even more positivity. That's the only relevant closing thought I had today. The other one is that I hope y'all can't hear all the noise going on around me. Like, I swear to God, my upstairs neighbors are being the epitome of upstairs neighbors right now. Very irritating. But yeah, that's about everything from me today. I'll end the review here, and I'll see you all in the next review.